for today's review is a movie that's pretty much one of the more notable mainstream horror movies of recent years, and that's The Cabin in the Woods. This very cool cover here. Also, kind of notable just because, I mean, it seemed to sit on the shelf for so long. It was kind of ridiculous. Like, okay, here's this uh, interesting horror movie with this kind of unique concept. But you can't see it. So that kind of almost led to the mysticism of the movie itself and its reputation. So for whatever reason, it just didn't seem to get released until finally, of course, it was released. Everybody got a chance to see it, and a lot of people, immediately fell in love with it. So it is an interesting concept to the movie. Like, well, I mean, like obviously first and foremost, spoiler city, man. There's no way I can get in this movie without spoiling it. So if you haven't seen it, here's the short version of my review. It's really good. Check it out. But from this point forward, spoilers. Within the reality of this movie, it's there is this organization. I don't know if it's a government organization or a privately funded organization that essentially has the fate of the entire world in their hands, and having to appease the gods or these creatures or whatever by offering them sacrifices. And what they have to do is do it in the form of what you'd see in a horror movie. So we have the main characters in this movie, the college kids, going out to the cabin in the woods to have a good time, like you've seen in a million other horror movies, except their fate is predestined, as it, I mean, essentially is anyway, with these kinds of movies. So kind of the sacrifices that they need to bring to these gods, these demons, these creatures, whatever. They have to have the jock, the athlete. They have to have the scholar, the kind of nerdy one. They have to have the slut, the whore. They have to have the fool, the stoner, and the virgin. So it's an interesting concept, and it's like kind of like almost like this improv game that they're playing. So they have the plants. They go into the isolated town. They have that forewarner, like, oh, don't go there, blah blah blah. Kind of like crazy old Ralph in Friday the 13th. It's a death camp. There's a death curse. You're all gonna die. Like one of those characters. So they have that, and he's planted, and they have all these scenarios that could be played out, and it's up to the kids in the movie to kind of bring the fate upon themselves. So there's all these things in the cellar, like all these haunted artifacts that they could choose, and they choose one that brings upon this zombie hick family, and it's all overseen by the organization, kind of sort of in charge, or the Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins characters, who they're the best. They're so good in this movie. They're so funny, so hilarious. The Bradley Whitford's character, like, it's never the merman, never. And that's pretty funny. But they choose that scenario, and that plays out, and so that's kind of how it works. So they kind of have to play it through as if it's a horror movie. So it's an interesting concept, and kind of like when the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, like, yeah, I get it. It's kind of a clever concept. Like, needless to say, anything with Joss Whedon's name slapped on it is going to get an audience who will praise it, except for Alien Resurrection. I think that's the one movie where people are like, no, he didn't do that. But you know what I mean, like Joss Whedon, definitely has his huge following, who will love everything he does. But yeah, I mean, I was like, I don't know. But then as it like was kind of brought to my attention, it kind of wasn't sort of unfair of me to expect one thing and then get another, and not like it because it wasn't what it was, because it's not like one of those movie within a movie kind of things. Like the reality of this movie is 100% within itself, sort of, if that makes any sense, which I'm sure it doesn't. But like Scream, like, it is a self-referential thing, but it's still that thing. What kind of bugged me about this movie is, like, they seem like they're cheating with this movie. So, the virgin, the scholar, the fool, well, everyone except the fool apparently, they're all manipulated to be the way that they are. So I thought that's kind of a cheat. And the line explaining why, with the director at the end of the movie, called the director, Sigourney Weaver, kind of popping on to explain everything. I was like, we work with what we get. We do what we can, basically. So I thought that was kind of, sort of a cheat, and kind of how it plays out that way. So I don't know, and kind of the infiltration of the whole organization. There's a completely unguarded, without a key, without a lock button that says purge, and then all the things come out. And it's like, really? But I don't know. But then it was kind of, brought to my attention that, no, it's not exactly what you think it is. It's more actually about the process of making a horror movie itself. Now, that is interesting. That caught my attention, that kind of viewpoint of this movie, because that's what I think it really, speaks for. Like, you can look at things within this movie and you think, yeah, okay, so that's like the process of making a horror movie in and of itself. So, of course, these kids who would essentially stand as the actors that they get, of course they'd be manipulated to be a certain way. Of course you have to take with what you can work with to make it into what you want it to be, which in this case is a horror movie. So you need the stapled characters. So you need to direct them, being the director, so in a certain way. So obviously, Sigourney Weaver is the director, the big boss. Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins' character, kind of like the general production crew of the movie. And I guess, the evil demons would be the studio itself, who, if you don't get this right, if you don't get this done the way it's supposed to be, if you don't get it on time, the world's going to end, figuratively. Here, literally. So that's interesting, I thought. And even when they get to that point where the actors kind of cross the sacred line and get into behind the curtain, basically, and press that purge button, all those horrible creatures come out. That's that's like the writer's mind, basically. That's where they are. They're inside the writer's mind. So that's pretty interesting. And of course, chaos breaks, and it's just, as is. You don't have to interpret it anyway. Just as is. It's a fucking cool scene. You have this, any number of creatures, come out like scary clowns, and the merman makes an appearance, which is funny. So I won't, in case you haven't seen it, you don't mind spoilers. I won't spoil that one part, which is pretty funny with the merman. But yeah, I mean, it is an interesting movie with an interesting concept. I think Joss Whedon referred to it as like a love-hate letter to writing a horror movie, which, from that aspect of it, from this is supposed to, be its own version of the process of making a horror movie, as opposed to, the self-referential thing where it's a horror movie within a horror movie that's, knows all the tricks of the trade and everything like that. I think from that perspective, it is a very clever movie. And, just in general, as a straight horror movie, it delivers, all the fun stuff that you expect out of a horror movie, except it is, one of those deconstruction type of movies, one of those meta type of movies that, you almost need to have in this climate with horror. So, you need to have an angle, you need to have a hook. Kind of one of the things, with, say, like the Evil Dead remake, the going to the cabin in the woods thing, it's just so cliche, it can't work straight anymore, so you have to have that kind of angle, I think. And so I think Cabin in the Woods is a very notable achievement in modern horror. So I think it's really good. Joss Whedon, great in directing it. There is a commentary track on here that I'd like to check out. Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon do a commentary. So Drew Goddard, the director. I haven't listened to it. It'd be interesting to hear their thoughts on the movie, and I don't know, I'm just getting distracted by this. It's pretty cool. So yeah, I think it's worth seeing. It's wicked, twisted fun. So that'll be my review for The Cabin in the Woods. 31 Days of Horror, more reviews coming. Stay tuned for all that. Until then, thanks for watching. See you later.